Showdown at Warg-Tooth Crossing, Chapter 9. The calm demeanor Eris usually wore was missing as he stormed up to Cale and barked, "What in all the gods' names brought this on?" "Rival gang," Cale answered dazedly. He looked around, taking in the scene. Burned corpses littered the street in front of the Toad. Townfolk rushed here and there trying to put out fires. Of the Steel Crew men who were injured, the worst were being tended to by the 2 field care mercenaries Bullet hired, while the others just sat wherever they happened to be and waited. The 4 black race survivors Bull had killed were being put on horses to be taken out of town. Flickering torchlight and illumination from the building fires doused the scene in a congealing orange glow. All of this contrasted jarringly with the music and sounds of drunken merriment coming from the Toad. "Rival gang? For control of the Somat?" "Yes." Eris looked around with a furrowed brow. He shook his head. "This is intolerable. Harl's smithy is in ruins. Several families have lost their houses. I suppose we're lucky no one was hurt or killed." "Luck had nothing to do with it. 2 lightning spells saved us from the brink of ruin," Cale muttered, then added, "How the hell did Bull do that?" "I don't know. He's no wizard. He must have an artifact of some sort. Pretty goddamn powerful artifact. Did you know he had something like that?" Eris turned to Cale angrily. "No, I most certainly did not." "I could ask you the same question." "Why the hell would I ask you?" "Oh, forget it." Cale crossed his arms and turned to walk away. He stopped and looked at the ground for a moment, then turned back to Eris. "Look, I've had a really bad day," Cale said. "I get it. You're pissed about the town. I am too. I didn't think things were going to get this out of hand, and I sure didn't know that Bull was a walking thunderstorm." Eris sighed. "Yeah, look, I've got to help some of the townsfolk out. This is bad, Cale." "I know. Hey, Eris," Cale called as Eris began walking away. "Do you have any idea what Bull could be carrying?" "I don't know exactly, but that was a mid-level lightning spell, judging by the damage and havoc it caused. The technical name for that spell is Laios Mitter. When things settle down, I can check my tomes and see if I can find anything." "Thanks, Eris." In reply, Eris waved, then hurried off. "It's his ring," Barth said, walking up behind Cale. "Come again?" "His ring. He doesn't flash it around, but he doesn't keep it secret either, obviously." Barth gestured to the destruction in the street. "You knew about it then?" "Sure. I was with him in Cave Town when he got it. That's how I knew to move everyone back before he set it off. This isn't the first time I've seen that thing light up." "You knew? I mean, damn," Cale whistled. "I guess something like that helps keep you the boss." Barth spit. "Don't hurt," he said, as he walked off to the swinging doors of the Toad. As the excitement began to calm down, Cale started shaking a little and looked for a place to sit down. The front deck of the Toad was good enough, and he sat down slowly, dangling his feet over the street. He began to dig for his pipe, but then figured he'd seen enough fire. He stopped and just looked at the stars. "Hell of a fight, eh, Cale?" Cale looked down to see Red walking towards him. "That it was. Looked pretty grim there for a moment." "Sure did. Didn't know the boss had that trick up his sleeve, but I surely am glad he did." Cale nodded. "So, the way I figure it, you and me got some unfinished business." Cale rolled his eyes and said, "Really, Red? Really? After all the shit that went down today? I just want to get my horse put up, have a drink, and get some sleep. Can't this wait?" "Shit, Cale. It ain't but early still. Sun just went down, and no." He stood straighter, putting his hand on the pommel of his sword. "It can't wait." Cale saw the hand on the sword. "You want to do this armed?" "Your choice, Cale." Cale stood up slowly, and Red moved back a pace, watching him warily. "Let's do this without swords, then. No use one more Steel Crew dying tonight," Cale said, reaching for his sword belt buckle. "Suits me," replied Red, as he took his sword belt off, mirroring Cale's movements exactly. When his sword was on the ground, he said, "Now let's see how good you are in a fair fight." Red raised his fists in front of his face. Cale looked around to notice that some of the men had gathered around to see the show. Cale extended his right hand to Red. "Well, no hard feelings either way this turns out, eh, Red?" Red looked puzzled, then dropped his right arm to shake Cale's proffered hand. As he stepped forward, Cale brought up his left fist lightning quick and rabbit punched Red right in the jaw below the ear. Red dropped to the ground out cold. "I don't fight fair," Cale said, as he rebuckled his sword belt and stepped over Red to find Raider. He found the horse wandering aimlessly among the burning buildings. Raider looked stunned, but calmed upon seeing Cale. Taking the reins, Cale led the horse slowly back to Moss's. He handed him off to a couple of Moss's stable hands, then headed for the Toad. As he strode past the swinging doors, Cale looked to the bar to get a drink, but then saw Bull and a group of the crew talking to Szeth. Szeth was the only one standing. Curious, Cale walked over. "Szeth, we owe you a great debt of thanks," Bull was saying. "Without you, we surely wouldn't have got warning of the coming attack." "Well, just doing my part, Bull," Szeth replied, shuffling his feet and looking around. He took another drink of his ale. "That's what I like about this crew," Bull said, standing up and putting his arm around Szeth. "Everyone pulling together. You know," continued Bull, removing his arm and pacing, "it was a damn lucky thing you happened to be coming back from the Danner spread at that moment." Szeth took another drink, then smiled weakly. "Sure was. And also pretty lucky that you managed to spot them so far off that you were able to beat them back to town with lots of time to spare to warn us." "Yeah, of course I pretty much rode my horse to death." "And the Danner spread is up on a rise so you can see them from a fair ways out." Well, that too, I reckon." "Yep, it's a damn good thing you got back here when you did, so we had time to get most of our fighters out of town to the decoys, so the main force of Black Wraiths wouldn't have much opposition when they rode into town." The saloon grew silent. Bull turned to Szeth. "You know, it's a good thing that Morgriff didn't know about my ring. If he did, he might have planned his attack a little differently. As it was, I guess he figured on the Black Wraith sitting here having drinks, didn't he?" Bull raised his arms and turned about, laughing hard. The men laughed with him. He continued, "You're pretty new to the Stool crew, aren't you, Szeth?" I guess so. Came on 2 months ago." "And you never knew I had my little friend here, did you?" Bull caressed his ring slowly. "Well, no. Well, God's damn, Bull, you surely did surprise me when you fried all them fellas. That was amazing." Szeth took another long pull of his drink. "I can imagine. Thing is, Szeth," now Bull came to stand behind Szeth, speaking into his ear, "I have this little suspicion that you were working with the Black Wraiths." Szeth turned and backed away from Bull. "That ain't true," he protested. "Don't lie to me, Szeth. For the Wraith attack to work, most of us needed to be out of town. That means you must have been working with them." "No, Bull." Szeth set his mug down on a table. He passed, backing away. "I swear, I got nothing to do with the Wraiths. I just saw those boys as I was coming back, and rode like the wind to warn you." I don't think I believe you, Szeth. Any of you boys believe him?" A murmur of no's and headshakes came from the men seated around. "Seems like they don't believe you either, Szeth." At this point, Szeth turned to run out of the saloon, but was blocked by a couple of the men coming in. They pushed him back to the center of the room. Bull took out his dagger and walked towards Szeth. "I tell you what, Szeth, I can kill you quick if you tell the truth now, or I can kill you real slow if you keep lying. Your choice." Despite its recent use, the blade was immaculate and gleamed in the lantern light. "Bull, no, really, I'm sorry. Please, Bull, don't kill me." Szeth tried backing away, but the two men were now behind him. Bull shoved his dagger up into Szeth's rib cage, entering in at his solar plexus. Szeth's eyes went wide as he coughed blood. Then he went limp and fell to the floor when Bull withdrew the blade. "Take that out with the other trash," Bull said to the two men who had stopped Szeth. "Melissa, dear," Bull called out to the bar, "toss me one of those dishcloths, will you?" Melissa shakily brought a rag over to Bull, who wiped his face where some droplets of Szeth's blood had hit, then meticulously wiped down his dagger. Looking up to see everyone staring at him in silence, he shouted at the bar, "Bring out more drinks. Let's have some fun." The barmaids got to work pouring, and everyone went back to their drinking. Cale watched Szeth's body get dragged out. Then he went over to the bar to get his drink. Quinn brought him an ale, but then hurried off to keep serving. Cale decided to satisfy his curiosity. He walked over to where Bull was talking to the group. "Boys," Bull said expansively, Here's to getting rich. Cheers and raised glasses went up. Cale, Bull said as Cale sat down at one of the tables. Aren't you glad to be part of all this? It sure has its moments, Bull, and the pay is a lot better than in the army. Another chorus of cheers and glasses. Bull laughed. That it does. Of course, I always took care of my boys better than the army. Nods of assent went all around the group. But figuring this little operation out and coming down here was the best move yet. Now the boys really cheered, and more drinks were called for. Just out of curiosity, that ring have anything to do with it? Cale asked casually while taking a long pull from his mug. The boys grew quiet again, but Bull was jovial. Ah, Cale, I would have told you before, but it never seemed to come up. But yeah, this little ring is quite the game changer, as you can see. He laughed and drank deeply. You like to hear the story of how I got it? Of course. It was hard earned, let me tell you. I was leading a group down into the caves. I had 3 other warriors from the steel crew, plus a wizard and a cleric, who were freelancing. We had made our way doggedly down to the 4th level when we were beset out of nowhere by 6 basilisks. Several men groaned while Bull took another drink. Before I knew it, 2 of my men were stoned, done. I cleaved one of the basilisks, and the mage managed to use 2 fireballs to bring their numbers down to 2, although we got singed from his imperfect mastery of the art. My remaining fighter killed another of the beasts, and I was moving to hit the last one when it managed to stone him. Jameson was his name. Good man. Bull raised his glass, and the others followed suit. I finished off the last basilisk, and wouldn't you know it, there was a treasure box. Weird, but that's the caves for you. The cleric managed to use a spell to open the box without setting off a trap, and among a significant amount of gold was this ring. We could tell it was magical, so the wizard laid claim to it and offered his portion of the gold against it. I wasn't about to argue. We were down 3 party members and a long way from the entrance. Bull took a fresh drink from Quinn, as she and the other barmaids brought more ale. The cleric was too low level to try to turn my men back to flesh, and we couldn't carry them, so we had to leave them there. Something I think about to this day. Bull bowed his head. But we had to get out of there. We actually didn't do too badly. The cleric and I fought from the front, and we had a few healing spells left to bolster us. But eventually it was too much, and the cleric was killed, against some giant ants of all things. The mage and I continued, and we had just got to where we could see the stairs to the 1st level when we were attacked by 3 jaguars. The mage gave a good accounting and cast his last few spells, but fell to their claws. The damage he had caused allowed me to finish them off, and I quickly went up the stairs and made for the exit, but not before getting the ring from the wizard's body. When I emerged from the caves, I considered myself extremely lucky. I went back to Grungy's to check in with the crew to rest and heal up. After cleaning up and getting a good meal, though, I was curious as to what I'd found and what it might be worth, so I went to Tex and Edna's to see what they thought. Tex and Edna's? Cale asked. Yeah, that's right. You've never been to Cave Town. They run the supply store there. You have never seen so much of every kind of fighting and adventuring equipment you might ever need. They do quite a thriving business there with all that comes up from the caves. But anyway, Bull took another drink while looking over to see that the men he had tasked to hang the bodies north of town had returned. They nodded to him, then got drinks themselves. Anyway, when I showed them the ring, I thought I might get a little something for it, but they told me that this little ring here is a ring of Olympus and casts lightning bolts. I couldn't believe it. They even offered me over 3,000 gold pieces for it. One of the new men spewed his beer. I was about to trade it in when I asked them if you had to be a wizard to use it, and I'm glad I did, because they told me that anyone could use it. Bull paused. Can you imagine? Anyone from the lowest kobold to a wizard like Soros could use this ring and blast lightning at whatever they wanted. Well, I told them I'd think about it and went back to the inn. Good thinking, Cale said. Good thinking is right, Bull agreed. But better thinking to try it out. I took it down into the caves again with a few of the boys and used it on the first thing we could find. There's nothing to it, really. You just think about wanting to use it and point it where you want the bolt to go. Wow, did it ever work. I took out 15 halflings just like that. After that, I sat down with the steel crew for a little conference. I had heard through the grapevine that the Scalies might be a source of Somat. I figured that the power of this ring, along with the guts and ability of the steel crew, Bull held up his glass, and there were cheers of "Hear, hear." I figured we could make a go of it, and the rest is history. Bull sat back and smiled. Good to know you have it, just in case. Yeah, I don't use it too often, but it helps knowing it's there. What's left of the black race will think twice before they try to take our turf, eh, boys? The men whooped and called for more ale. The din of conversation grew, and the party was well and truly started. Cale took a seat away from the main crowd and sat down wearily. He rubbed some stubble on his chin and nursed his ale. Things were getting pretty wild as the boys let off some steam after the close call. After a while, Bull got up and bid them good night. He took 2 of the barmaids with him and went back to his room. Cale looked around for Quinn, but she was busy serving. Eventually, things started winding down as men passed out in place or went to their rooms. With the lanterns low, Cale looked up from what was probably one too many ales and saw Quinn sit down. "You should go to bed," she said. "You should come with me," Cale replied. Quinn smiled. "You know, that's not the way it went down." "What?" "I mean, that's not the way Bull got that ring." "How would you know?" "Because I was there." Quinn took a look around. No one was conscious within earshot, but she leaned in closer. "I saw what really happened." "Well, goddamn it, tell me." "Shh. He doesn't know I know, and I want to keep it that way." "Okay, fair enough. So what did you see?" "Like I said, I came with the crew to the caves and was staying with them at Grungy's. One night I had some time, so I went outside to smoke a little tish. I was in the back when I saw a huge flash of light and quite the ruckus. Some more scuffling went on, then it was quiet. I stayed low, but peeked around the corner to see what the hell was going on. Turns out I wasn't the only one. Bull came into the alley too, but from the front and didn't see me. He walked into the dim light with his sword drawn and could see there were 4 bodies lying in the alley, as could I. There were 3 pretty high-level fighters and a really high-level wizard. The fighters were charred and unmoving, but the wizard was still alive, though bleeding out pretty bad. Bull came up to the wizard, making sure the fighters were indeed dead, and no one else was around. I made sure I stayed hidden. "What happened?" "The wizard said he'd been ambushed by the fighters, some rivalry over something or other. He was hurt and wanted Bull's help. He offered Bull a lot of gold, but I guess Bull didn't believe him. Bull looked up and down the alley again, then choked the wizard out, making sure he couldn't talk to cast any spell. When the wizard was dead, Bull searched him, and that's how he found that ring." "Figures. That was the same day he lost those 3 guys down in the caves. At that point, the Steel crew was ready to revolt. They were getting slaughtered in the caves and had hardly anything to show for it. When Bull figured out how powerful the ring was, he knew it was his way out, and he made up the story about finding it. Sounded better than stealing it off some near-dead wizard." "That makes a lot more sense. From what I've heard of the caves, there are powerful items down there, but they are deeper down than Bull was saying, just like him to luck into a fight gone bad and steal a life-changing magic ring." Quinn nodded. She took a drink from Cale's mug and said, "All this can't go on. I feel like the black wraiths are just the beginning." Cale put his hand on hers, holding the mug. "Yeah, maybe so, for now. Let's go to bed. You sure know how to charm a girl, sweetie. What can I say? I'm just a naturally charming guy."